Welcome to today's episode of Conquer the Day. I am your host, Lindsey Rago.
And I'm your co-host, Brian Pickowicz.
And today we want to show you a better way to diet for weight loss. If you are in the spot where you know summer's coming, maybe you're listening to this close to when it comes out, you know you're going to be wearing less clothes soon, then that's probably what's on your mind is how do I start getting in shape? How do I lose weight? And you're probably starting to think of all of the diets and the things that you've done in the past. The problem here, what we are going to solve today, is that usually dieting is painful, it's not fun, and it leaves you feeling hungry and restricted. We want to turn that approach on its head and show you a better way to diet that actually makes you feel physically good while you're doing it. It will still give you energy, and you can eat whatever you want. You can still have alcohol, you can still go out to restaurants, you can still live your life while you're dieting for weight loss. So we're going to show you how to do that today, right?
And I think that that's the real big key is figuring out a way that makes it sustainable and something that you want to keep doing,
Yes.
right? Because if something is seen as a painful experience, right? If you think of dieting as dying, right? Those first three letters. If you think of it as a painful process that is restrictive, that you hate, instead of something that gives you life and gives you more energy and really helps you be your best, which a good diet should do that,
Right.
Right? It should allow you to step into any situation and be at your peak, right? You think mentally being on, feeling great in your body. Mm-hmm. If we're in that other space, though, where we're seeing it as this approach that we don't want to take part in, how long is it going to work?
Yeah.
How long are we going to sustain it?
Definitely not going to maintain results even if we get them.
Exactly. And so before we dive in, we want to kind of cue you in on the mental approach that we're taking with this too. So Lindsey and I are the head coaches and the co-founders of the Fitness Project, where we help small business owners and career-driven professionals figure out how to make fitness work for them so they can be mentally in a better space and emotionally in a better space. It's really about understanding that the way we take care of ourselves impacts everything else in our life. And so when we start to build the right habits for our health and our body, we start to feel better, we have more energy, we're mentally sharper, and we start to have that confidence, right? And that confidence permeates out through everything we do. And so we're kind of looking through it through this lens. If you're a professional, if you're someone who is building, right, something out of yourself, we need to have these foundational habits in place too. And so the way that we're going to talk about this is understanding that you're probably busy. You're probably on the go. There are things that you have responsibilities of taking care of that make it hard for you to diet. Mm-hmm. And so dieting should not be your life.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't need to be restrictive. It doesn't need to be hard. It should be something that you can make a few subtle tweaks and really start to see the benefit of.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if that's the position you're in, then we totally get it. And as business owners ourselves, we're going to step in and give you everything that we actually implement into our lives, as well as what we have all of our clients start with. Some really great principles that you can implement and start feeling the results of immediately. With that said,
yes.
Shall we?
Let's dive in.
Okay. Starting at the top. First, we need to compare and contrast a little bit just to show how different this approach we're going to give you is from the typical approach. When people are first thinking about dieting, usually it comes as a knee-jerk response to not feeling good, right? To feeling like you have a day where you step into your closet and nothing fits you that day, right? Feeling like you see yourself in a photo and you grimace at that photo and you say, all right, time to get it together. I'm going to start a diet again, right? And what usually happens when that is like the response?
Well, it's this knee-jerk reaction that's an overcorrection, right? So we say, this is where I'm at, and we have this painful experience, right? We get frustrated, we get angry, maybe there's a feeling of fear that, hey, I need to change something right now. And we go to the total opposite end of the spectrum where we say, okay, I'm going to cut out all my carbohydrates. I'm going to stop drinking altogether. I'm not going to eat any more sugar. I'm going to go on the 75 hard or the keto diet or whatever it is that your flavor of the week is. And this overcorrection actually makes us feel more burnt out, right? Because we're expending all this mental energy on focusing on what not to eat rather than focusing on what to eat. It also creates this feeling of hunger because we usually cut out, let's say, I'd say the average person probably drops down to 800 to 1,000 calories. Maybe it's 1,200 calories because you want to lose the weight as fast as possible. And that is such a massive calorie deficit that you end up being hangry. You end up being lethargic. You end up having that energy dip. And so this overcorrection actually perpetuates the cycle of being on and off because you can't sustain it. It's not what your body needs. It's not what your brain needs. And even if you think of the reductionist mindset of I'm just going to pull everything bad out, we usually don't put anything good in, right? And so our body doesn't have the calories, the micronutrients, the nourishment it needs for us to really be in our state of power, right? That state where we show up and we're like, hey, I could take care of some things. And so we start to see that this is the pattern. And now it's great that we've started, right? Pain's a really great place to build from. That frustration that fuels us is really great because it gets us to change. But now what we need to do is we need to find a better path. And so once you get that momentum, you need to find something to move towards, right? We're motivated by two factors in our life, to avoid pain and to receive pleasure. If you're in that spot where you get going because you say, hey, the things aren't where I want them to be, it's like fantastic. But now what are you moving towards, right? And that's where we start to build more of these other habits, if you will, that get us to where we want to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that you can really, when you start to zoom out and you see it that way, you can easily tell that if you were to see somebody else doing that, right, cutting out all of their food, dropping their calories in half, and you start to observe them, you would see that they were lower energy, they were a little bit more irritable, and you would ask, why are you doing this to yourself? Yeah. Right? But that's what we do to ourselves. When we feel frustrated, we just take action on what worked in the past, even if we hated it, right? We're like, okay, but I know that this is going to work. When in reality, if you're having to do it again, it didn't work the first time.
Yes.
That's a big one. So we're going to flip this and think, okay, we're not going to do those things anymore. We're not going to go back. Let's look at a different way to do this, right? So it doesn't just start with strategy, which might be the craving. It's like, just tell me what to eat. But what should we start with instead?
The first thing we always have to change is our mindset.
Yes.
Whenever we're in a space where we're trying to change something about ourselves or something we're engaged in, we have to develop a different mental approach because the old model of thinking is what left us in this position. And so that old model of thinking is I need to lose weight as fast as possible. I need to change my body as fast as possible. I will do whatever it takes to change my body. And this short-term instant gratification mindset is not the right approach to longevity, sustainability, and to results, right? Because a lot of the results that we want don't happen in a month.
Right.
A lot of the results that we want don't happen in 3 months, right? You can make some really great progress. I remember when I first started competing in bodybuilding, I was 250 pounds. And look at me right now. I'm 210, 212. So I had 40 pounds of body fat on me. And I started to say, okay, I'm going to diet. And I was like, I'm going to lose 20 pounds and I'll be at my goal weight. And I lost 20 pounds. I was like, oh no, like I still got so much further to go. I thought it was going to take me 3 months to reach the stage. Ended up taking me 7.5. And that's okay because I won the contest. And so if the goal is to win the contest, you need to be able to do it in the time that works for you. If your goal is to build a healthy life, you need to do it in a time that allows you to actually build it. And so we have to change our mindset from being weight loss driven as fast as possible to saying, hey, these are the results I want. But more important than getting the result of my body changing, I need to change. I need to become a healthy person. I need to change my mindset about how I treat my body and how I handle myself, because a lot of times the way that we handle food has nothing to do with the food. It has to do with ourselves. It has to do with the emotions. It has to do with our mindset. It has to do with the feeling that we're seeking. And so if we can start to change the mindset from being instant gratification, lose weight as fast as possible, to saying, hey, I want to lose weight. I want to feel strong. I want to feel confident. I want to have that energy. And more importantly, I want it to last. That mindset of longevity and sustainability is where we want to start to focus our attention.
Yeah, I love that. And don't really worry about all the little things that have to change with your mindset.
Yes.
Because those are going to happen over time. What we're saying is start with a different mindset. Start the process with a different frame. Rather than lose weight ASAP yesterday, okay, I want to get healthy and I want to do this like for real this time, right? Even just that change in dialogue you might be saying the same thing. I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to feel better. But you're thinking about it. You're approaching it mentally completely different, because that leads you to saying, what does my body need? Okay, I need to learn how to take care of my body, because I've never really learned healthy habits with food. Like, I've kind of just eaten. And that's a great realization in and of itself. So really what we're saying is approach it with a different mindset to start. And you'll see that that evolves over time. But that's really the starting ground, right? And then strategically speaking,
once we start to develop the mindset, we need to take an inventory, right? What is already there? Imagine if you were going to remodel your house and you didn't take the square footage, you didn't look at what walls need to be repainted, you didn't measure and see, okay, hey, this is where the beams are and this is where the pillars are, and I need to make sure that I'm moving around them. If you didn't take an inventory, you would
start
just
doing it.
You would just start tearing everything down. You wouldn't know what's worth keeping and what is worth changing, right? And so you have to look at your diet and say, what am I currently eating? What habits do I have in place? How am I currently eating? Do I eat a lot of snacks? Do I eat too many M&Ms as I'm walking across the floor at my office space? I had a client that was their problem. They're like, oh, there's M&Ms everywhere. And whenever I get up from my desk, I eat M&Ms. I was like, all right, so then don't do that. And we had a strategy around that I could talk about another time.
Oh, if you're watching this, what's your favorite M&M? Comment below.
But you might also want to look at how, what are the reasons, right? Why do you eat?
Yes.
Right? What are the emotional reasons? What are the mental reasons? What are you seeking from food? You want to take an inventory of what's there, right? Because that's going to be how you start to, or that's going to inform you rather for how you start to improve your nutrition.
Would you actually, I'm thinking of, okay, how would you take an inventory? You can give your perspective, but I have an idea. I think that do you want to go?
Well, why don't you go?
Okay. So I'm like, I just want to know. But so the first, if you're thinking, okay, well, what do they mean? Like, how do I actually take inventory? You might just start with having a piece of paper and just writing down the food that you ate, when you ate it, and just any time you put food in your mouth, just like writing it down, or drinking water, drinking alcohol, drinking whatever else that you drink in a day, write it down. That's inventory, right? You're just kind of writing down all the things that are presently there. You could go the extra mile and write down maybe how you felt while you were doing it, or maybe how you felt after you ate. But overall, you just want to take an inventory of what you eat, to your point, how you're eating, i.e., do you eat all day long or do you only eat twice, and why you're eating. That's a really helpful starting ground to figure out what to change and what to keep, right? Does that kind of align with what you would say or no?
Yeah. And so that inventory informs us. And then the third thing we want to do is we want to start to become mindful, right? What does that mean to be mindful? It means that we are aware of our emotions, thoughts, and actions in the present moment. And so being mindful is paying attention when we're actually eating the food, starting to maybe shift from eating it as fast as possible to and paying attention to how it tastes, paying attention to how it makes our body feel, paying attention to our hunger cues, right? If you listen to your hunger cues, one of the things I tell clients who struggle with tracking their food, I'm like, your body tracks your food.
It tells you.
It tells you. Your body will tell you when you've eaten too much because you will feel it. It's not natural for us to be eating all day long and to be overstimulated or overstuffed with food. So your body will tell you if you're paying attention. Right. So we have to become conscious. We have to become aware. And that just means seeing, hey, even if you're someone who struggles with maybe late night snacking, asking yourself the question before you go and get more potato chips or before you go and get another bowl of ice cream, like, what do I really want right now? And why am I eating this? Starting to become more aware of some of those habits and mindsets that we have around food and also how the food's making us feel so that we build knowledge of the way that we are approaching food and the way that food's making us feel.
Yeah, the way that food's approaching us. Food is now animated. No, I think it's also how your body reacts to food. Like how we are mentally approaching a food, but then also how our body reacts to it. Because your body is different from my body, is different from your body. And you're going to react to foods totally different than I might. I might be able to have yogurt with peanut butter and fruit on it and feel great. You might feel really bloated or feel just tired and sluggish after, right? So just becoming mindful will tell you a lot. And the thing that I would tie this down with is being mindful there's not necessarily a perfect way to like eat mindfully. You just need to start paying attention, right? You just need to start paying attention. I think a lot of times when we say slow down with your food, chew, taste the food, like you think that needs to be like this slow, methodical process. I was thinking about this yesterday when I was eating my food. It took me mindfully eating because I sat down and consciously said, I'm going to enjoy this lunch. I'm going to sit and enjoy this lunch instead of eating while I work. Great shift in habits, by the way. It took me 6 minutes to eat my food. And I was eating slow. I was eating a full bowl of food, like a burrito bowl. It took me 6 minutes. Typically, you're probably eating your food in 30 seconds to 2 minutes if you're trying to eat fast, right? Or you take a bite and you come back to it 3 hours later. So if you slow down, it really doesn't take that much time, but it does feel like you have more time, which is interesting. It's very perception based.
Well, and what's great is you'll feel more full.
And you'll feel more full. Yes, that's
because you're giving your body time to feel the food coming into it. Like you think of how fast, if you eat food, and let's say you eat a full meal in a minute, you never gave your stomach any time to meet your brain.
Yes.
Right? Whereas if the food takes more time, you're chewing it, you're thinking about it, your body is filling up with that food over a longer period of time. It changes how much you feel like you need to eat. And so once we start to be mindful, though, we want to then start to add in some things, right? And so we've changed our mindset. I'm going to be healthy. We've taken inventory. Here's what's there. Now we're mindful. We're approaching food differently in a more present way. Now we want to start to add different foods, right? Because it's not just enough to subtract foods, right? If you cut back on all your carbohydrates, if you start slashing all your calories, you need to make sure that there's some healthy, micronutrient-dense foods that are allowing you to feel good. And so that means eating more healthy, whole foods. It doesn't mean whole foods like the grocery store. I mean whole foods that are closer to their natural source. Think of going to a farm or going hunting or going to...
grocery store?
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Think of going to a grocery store and selecting foods that look like they were grown on a farm, or maybe they were caught somewhere. Like they're more natural to how you would find them in nature.
The river,
right? That's what I'm trying to say. But you want to be able to eat foods that are closer to their natural source. And that also means adding in more protein, right? A lot of us are not eating enough protein, which makes it harder for us to get the results that we want. And protein also satiates us. We want to add in more healthy fats, right? Like avocados or salmon or even some nuts, right? We want to be adding in healthy fat sources so that we have more natural energy for our brain and for our cells. And then we want to start to layer in meals, right? Adding in more meals instead of snacks, adding in less processed options, right? It doesn't mean you have to eliminate anything that's processed. Like we still eat processed foods, but we go for the least processed option, right? The one that's more in favor of longevity, or it might just be reducing some of those options too.
Yeah, maybe 80-20. Because I eat plenty of food that's processed, i.e. like bread.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm not eating it for every meal.
And when you say you eat plenty of bread, you mean
like
like you have like a slice of bread a day.
Yeah.
It's not like 20% of your calories are coming from bread.
Right. That is true. That is true. Let's say I eat 3 meals in a day, which I typically do, most of those meals are whole foods based, and I'll add a piece of bread to maybe 2 of those meals, right? Which sounds funny. It's like, do you just eat bread and eggs all day? No, I do eat lots of different kinds of foods. But anyway, you can include processed foods, but we want to think of the biggest shift really here is instead of thinking about what you need to cut out or take away, you want to think about what you can add in. It opens up your mind to possibilities when you say, what should I add to my diet? Rather than, okay, I can't have any of these foods. Even if you have access to, let's say that you cut out brownies, ice cream, and cocktails, you still have access to thousands and thousands and thousands of food options. But in your brain, now it says, oh, I can only have celery and whole eggs or egg whites and
baked chicken.
And baked chicken. Because you're closing down your mind, you're trying to remove things, you're trying to cut things out. So it just naturally starts to feel smaller, right? Your options feel smaller. Whereas if you take your inventory and then you say, all right, I'm going to add in some healthy foods to this, what you'll see is that you naturally, without even trying, slowly reduce the amount of unhealthy or processed foods that you might have in your daily diet now. Just by saying, I'm going to add in this type of food this week. I'm going to add in eating breakfast because I wasn't before. I'm going to add in something else. When it comes to dieting, this single shift alone is a game changer.
Exactly.
It makes it so much easier and more enjoyable.
Because you're going to have food, you're going to have your relationship with food for the rest of your life. So starting to become more open with what you're putting into your body, right? From a health standpoint, like I used to hate avocados. I don't know why. They never did anything to me. But I never would eat them. And then I started to figure out how to enjoy them. Quite frankly, I started adding different seasonings or different textures. I started to eat them in different ways, and I started to develop a different relationship with how those foods that I would eat.
Well, your body's adaptive.
Yeah.
Right? Like your taste buds will adjust.
You have to think you've been eating processed foods your whole life that are created in a lab to keep you addicted. So it's going to take time to become more adaptive to healthy food again. You're kind of returning to nature in some sense. You're returning to what your body is supposed to be able to do. Yeah. It's not natural to eat Oreos and potato chips. That's not what your parents, your grandparents, or your great-grandparents would have been doing. Right. They would have been eating foods that were grown on a farm, that were hunted in the fields or in the woods. They would have been, getting vegetation that came from the earth, which is what I was trying to say at the beginning.
Got it.
You would have been eating foods that were built around you, right? More locally harvested. So it doesn't mean you have to go and get organic or you have to go and shop at the local farm.
Yep. Or just eat veggies.
You can start doing this at the grocery store today, or you can do it at a restaurant, right? But before you grab the packet of chips off the shelf at the grocery store or at the gas station, just ask yourself, like, hey, what would I eat in this scenario? What's closer to nature? What's healthier than what I currently have? And that's a really good lens to start to add foods into your diet that make you feel better.
Yeah. Now, at this point, you might be saying, well, Brian and Lindsey, like that's great. That there's some little tips I can pick up here and there, but I kind of already do a lot of this, right? And if you are in that space, we're going to address that. If you're not, it's okay. Start here. Ignore this, right? Because these are the principles that will act as your new foundation. It's interesting because a lot of times we're just never taught healthy habits with food, right? You kind of just, like I was saying at the beginning, you kind of just eat in general. Like you just eat every day when you're hungry or not hungry, right? But you never intentionally said, how would I eat if I was a really healthy person, right? We don't usually ask ourselves that kind of question. So if this is brand new to you and you don't have these principles in place, absolutely start here. But if you do have these principles in place and you're kind of already eating pretty well, at least you feel like most of the time you're pretty balanced, but you're not seeing results, then here's where you need to go next. If you feel like again, the title of this podcast is A Better Way to Diet for Weight Loss, right? So if you are eating well and you're trying to eat healthy and you're doing pretty well with it, but you're just not seeing the result, even though you're physically feeling better, then you might have a bit of a knowledge gap, which is completely normal. What I mean by that is that you are not sure how to go from healthy eating to creating physical results, right? Physical results meaning weight loss, building muscle, losing body fat, achieving a certain physique or physical body, right? It's a different process. There is a bridge that has to be built to get to the other side where you're getting physical results. It's not enough to just eat well. But if you are doing all of these things, if you are implementing all these principles and you eat pretty well right now, but you're just not seeing the result in the mirror, then you probably have what I would call a knowledge gap, right? Because it's a totally different process to just eat healthy than it is to actually physically see weight loss, build muscle, lose body fat. And in order to walk across that bridge, we have to, quote, bridge the gap, right? If you're at that point where you are doing all this and you're feeling stuck and you're wondering, okay, what am I missing? That's the time where you need to pull somebody in who's an expert and can actually help you with your strategy, right? And what we want to do here at the Fitness Project, like we said at the beginning, our biggest focus is to help you integrate fitness seamlessly into your life so you can perform at your best mentally, emotionally, and in those areas of life that matter most to you. So if this is where you're at and you really resonate with this approach and this, I guess, intention around dieting, then we want to help you. We want to help you bridge that gap. So if you want to learn more about what we can do for you and what your roadmap would look like, then go ahead, use the link in the show notes below. It's thefitnessproject.us/application. Complete an application, and then you can book a call with, it'll be me if you are booking this in 2023.
They can book it with me.
They could book it with you? Okay.
Yeah, it's on both.
Oh, true. So you'll book a discovery call with us, and that's where we'll go over what's your big goal? Where are you really hitting roadblocks? And what are all the things that you're doing right now that we need to account for? Once we know really where you're coming from, then we can go about the process of building that strategy, building that roadmap, and really making sure that this is the perfect fit for you. So if that resonates, go ahead, click the link below. We would love to serve you, support you, and we would be honored to do so. So with that said,
thank you for being here. We hope these points have given you some food for thought, no pun intended, and really helped you align on the best way for you to build the body, the lifestyle, and have the health that you want. So thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for being a part of our podcast. And on that note, go out and conquer your day.
cheers.
Cheers.